Hey everybody, coming to you on Wednesday. Maybe the biggest day of the Buster Posey era at Oracle Park. We'll see how this turns out, but he has made what probably will be the biggest decision he makes as a Giants president of baseball operations. You never know how many times you get to hire your own manager, and we don't know how long Buster will want to do this and want to be in charge, but he had a chance here to hire his manager, and he has gone off the board. It's Tony Vitello, as you guys know by now, I'm sure, the head coach at Tennessee, one of the best coaches in college baseball, 47 years old. The key here, he has never been in professional baseball, and that is why it's a historic hire for Buster, potentially a trailblazing hire. Might change the way that Major League Baseball teams look at all of this. It's been something that's been talked about for years. Just you're seeing more and more guys get hired out of college, but usually they're pitching coaches are on the hitting side. We remember Gabe Kapler's staff, not a whole lot of experience there, but this is something completely new. This is a guy who has spent 23 years in college, his entire career in college, the last eight at Tennessee, but he turned them from basically a doormat into one of the best programs in the country. They are rebuilding the ballpark down there. They have been to the College World Series three times in the last 5 years, I think. 2024 national champions, the first time in that program's history that they won a national championship. And I think a key here, and we'll talk about developing guys, but he has averaged at Tennessee almost seven draft picks a year. So he is just bringing a ton of talent through that system. The Giants have some of it. Drew Gilbert, obviously, Blade Tidwell as well. So their first round pick this year was from Tennessee. So they've been drawn to Tennessee. I think Buster has been drawn to that program a little bit in part because of who has been in charge of it. And he is now in charge at Oracle Park. Tony will be introduced next Thursday. It's a long time, but it also makes sense. Major League Baseball doesn't want people to announce stuff during the World Series. I think for the Giants, this dragged out a little bit because, look, he has a job right now in college, and I think this was probably a tough decision for him to leave that program, leave all the kids that he recruited, and come to San Francisco. But he decided to do it, and it means that it happened 48 hours before the start of the World Series. So the Giants have to wait until an off day there next Thursday. They will wait, and the World Series could be over by then. We'll see how this works out. I think that's one of many subplots here that's fascinating. The Dodgers obviously in that they're trying to win a second straight title. And one thing I'm sure Tony will be asked at that press conference, and he will be asked a lot over the next 2 years, is how do you go with that team? And I think that's a question for Buster as well. And one of his answers here is you go and get someone who doesn't care about stuff like who just goes, I don't care if I'm the underdog. I mean, if you look at anything Tony has done at Tennessee and the way he built that program, they are brash, they are fiery, they go at everyone. It's a bunch of Drew Gilberts. Maybe there's only one Drew Gilbert, probably, but it's a bunch of guys similarly built. And maybe that's the right thing to go at a Dodgers team. We will see. Ultimately, this comes down to talent and how you play between the lines. And they're going to have the most talent. But it is something where I feel like the last couple of years, and this past season especially, Giants just looked overmatched by the Dodgers and by the Padres. And I think that was a big part of Bob Melvin being let go is the way they played against those teams in the second half and in the final 2 months. And, you know, Buster's not used to that. He's used to watching Madison Bumgarner try to fight Yasiel Puig. So, or, Nick Hundley, who is also a big part of the search. I'll get to him. He tried to fight Puig as well. So I think he probably wanted some guys who could go at the Dodgers, try to make the Giants more competitive in the division and more competitive overall. Another thing that I think was really important, and this was one line that stood out in the press release to me, he said of Tony, there's a commitment to developing players that stood out. And that's key for the Giants. They have not done a great job of developing over the years. I think they have not quite figured out how to fully get guys through their system, get them ready for the big leagues, and then have them succeed at the big league level. And we know Randy Wynn's now in charge of player development. They had a good year. It was a very good year, especially at the low minors. I think if you're Buster, you look around and you see all this hitting talent, led by Bryce Eldridge coming, but Joswar down in A-ball, all those guys who are on the way, and they're a few years away, but how can you as an organization do a better job of developing guys? And then how can you develop them at the big league level? How can you make sure that you see like an all-star 2024 season out of Elliot Ramos? How can you get the most out of him the next year instead of maybe some of what we saw this year, like some of the steps back in left field? So I think that's a big part of this is a commitment to developing players. And one thing we've heard from Buster, you read between the lines of his end of season discussions with the media, his end of season press conference, the call he did after Bob Melvin got let go. I think he would like to see more before games. I think he would like to see this team better prepared. I think he'd like to see them more fundamentally sound. And so he brings in a guy who's a teacher. I mean, Tony's the best recruiter in college baseball, but he is coming from a background too where you have to get these guys ready. And part of recruiting them is taking a 17, 18-year-old kid and getting him ready to be a first round pick. And he has done that over and over and over again. So I think that's a big part of this for Buster. It's interesting. He was a really good college player as well. He was a first rounder. And I'm sure he was drawn to that and thinks there's more that we can do at the big league level to help these guys get better every single day. The other stuff about Tony Vitello, everyone I've talked to over the last couple of weeks about him just brings up two things: energy and charisma. Tremendously energetic. Some people are like he's like the most charismatic guy I've met or I know. Everybody seems to like him who's known him for a long time. So I think the press conference is going to go very well for these guys. I think initially next spring there's going to be a big bounce for the organization. We will see how he is in games. We'll see how he is handling the lineup. We'll see what he does, if your closer struggles, as they did this year, how he handles that. We'll see how he is with pinch hitters and stuff like that. I think, a key will be having some experience around him. But in terms of energy, in terms of charisma, in terms of work ethic, all that stuff, I think he checked every box for the Giants. And this was a search that, officially started the day after the season ended when they let go of Bob Melvin, but I think unofficially started before that. Tony has said we haven't spoken to him yet, but he was on a podcast recently. He said he went to Coors Field. He wanted to see some of his players who were there. Um, he said he met with the general manager of the Giants. We assume in this case he meant president of baseball operations of the Giants, and that's how this got started. But I've heard that Tony is somebody that Buster has kind of had an eye on for a while. He said conversations with people around the organization about him going back earlier this year. And during the search, I'd heard he just kind of kept circling back to his name and kept kind of bringing him up in conversations. Nick Hundley was the other front runner here. He's somebody obviously he's one of Buster's best friends. Made a lot of sense. I thought from the start it was Nick's job if he wanted it. Nick pulled out last week at some point. He's going to spend time. He has a young family. He's a rising star in front office circles as well. So not ready to be a manager. I think if he wanted it, it probably would have been him. But the other guy that Buster's kind of been infatuated with this whole time is Tony Vitello. And he ends up getting him. He brings him in, and they have a lot ahead of them. Big offseason for the Giants. They need to rebuild their pitching staff. They need two starters. I think we're probably going to hear a lot of rumors about Max Scherzer, who is one of Tony's closest friends. They go way back to Missouri 2 decades ago. They need to rebuild their bullpen, and I think that's going to be the biggest question. That's the easiest thing to figure out with a manager when you're watching games is how does he handle the bullpen? So you want to give this guy a good bullpen so he can succeed. That's going to be a big part of this offseason. We'll see what Buster does. Initially, they have the press conference, and I think the other key here over the next couple of weeks, the next month, is filling out a coaching staff. And we will see if anybody comes with him from Tennessee or from college baseball or from his previous stops or his background. But I do think one thing that stood out to me as well, listening to Buster talk at the end of the year, is he made it clear he's going to have more of a say. I mean, the previous staff was Bob Melvin's staff. Buster inherited it. And he felt very strongly, these are your guys, and you handle your guys. You choose your guys. I do think that Buster's going to have a say in some of what comes next. I think they probably could use an experienced bench coach or somebody on that bench. There's a bunch of guys who have been managers in the big leagues who are looking for a way back in. Those names will come up in the next week. Some of those guys may be interviewed for the Giants job in the last few weeks as part of that search. So potentially, if they could add someone who has been a big league manager to be Tony's bench coach, that seems like it would make a lot of sense. There's some in-house guys who have a lot of experience at this point and very good reputations and are close to Buster. Mark Hallberg sticks out. He has been on both staffs, Gabe Kapler's staff, and then Bob Melvin's staff. I think it'd be interesting to see if they find him a bigger role. Ron Wotus, he's around forever. He's been with everybody. He's been with every manager going back to Dusty. So what kind of role does he have going forward? What kind of role does Dusty have? Is he somebody that Tony can lean on? He's back with the organization. I think his voice has been heard a little bit more the last few months. So does he have a role in this? And remember, Bruce Bochy, Buster said as well. I mean, if he wanted a role in the organization, it wouldn't be manager, but they would welcome him back. So is he somebody who they can lean on as they move forward? The other big part of this, I'm curious to see what they do I would imagine the hitting coaches probably there will be some change there, but JP Martinez, the pitching coach, very well thought of in the industry. He is someone who is younger, who is very advanced in his methods. And I think did a really nice job this year with not just obviously the starting staff had a successful season until everybody got hurt, but you see what they did with Landon Roop. I think what he did with the bullpen early in the year was pretty impressive. And then really in August and in early September, until those guys just frankly ran out of big league arms, I thought the pitching side with JP Martinez and Garvin Alston did a nice job. So it'll be interesting to see if those guys are holdovers, if they're kept. I think there are going to be some guys where Buster tells Tony like, "This is your guy. This is our guy. He's going to be part of this." So that's immediately what's next. After that, we'll see. This is like with everything. I think one thing I said, we did an Emergency Giants podcast, and Cole asked for my reaction. And I'm like, my main reaction is we just don't know. This is a guy who's trying something that has never been done before. Buster is trying something that has never been done before. You can look at Pat Murphy with Milwaukee and look at what he has been able to do. Pat also spent over a decade in professional baseball. He was a bench coach, he was an interim manager, he did all this. This hasn't been tried before. So this is completely new. Could be great, could be awful, could be somewhere in between. But I think Buster's betting a lot. He's really betting his regime that this is going to be great. And it's a huge swing, but I feel like it's a time where he felt like it was time to take a huge swing. And the reason I think that that makes a lot of sense and probably why he felt that is these numbers: 81, 79, 80, 81. Those are the Giants' wins over the last 4 years. They have been a 500 team since Buster's last season as a player. It's basically the same thing every year. Have the same conversations in the second half every year on the podcast. We are writing the same stories. You guys are seeing the same thing at home. So this is completely different, but the Giants right now, where they are, they could probably use something completely different.